We now want to position the dowel pins with Duralay acrylic. Put a few drops of the liquid into the removable dies and carefully apply some of the powder. To the dies and also to the edentulous area and to the central next to the central preparation. These will be all done in acrylic. Allow this to set up for a few moments so that we can position the dowel pins without them falling down. Take your dowel pins and position them as if they were the root of the tooth. Try to position these dowel pins parallel to one another for ease of removal. It will be necessary to add some bent paper clips to the edentulous area to the abutment teeth, or to the teeth adjoining the abutment, so that these will be retained in the stone. We've now applied both dowel pins and the paper clips to the edentulous area, to the tooth next to the removable die, and to the tooth next to the removable die on this side. Prior to pouring the stone, we're going to cut some slots or dimples on either side of the die with a large round burr. I'll show you a larger model which will illustrate this more clearly. These are the slots on either side of the dowel pin. This is what a finished dowel pin will look like, with the slot on either side of it. These slots aid in the retention of the dowel, aid in the retention of the die, and will retain your soldering relations. After we've cut these slots on both dowels, we'll box the impression ready for pouring in stone. Block out the tongue space with wax. It may be good to secure this with a hot spatula. Using wax rope, apply it around the outer periphery, and then apply boxing wax. We'll box this up and show you the finished box model ready for the application of the stone. This is the box model ready to receive the stone. We've added 2 small pieces of wax rope to the top of the dowel pins to aid in removal after the finished model is mounted on the articulator. After the model has been poured up in stone, it will be necessary to remove the tray. Making several saw cuts or cuts with a Joe Dandy disc through the tray will enable you to break it loose without disturbing the stone or the silver-plated dies. I have removed this one section and will endeavor to remove the rest of the tray. Using the Joe Dandy disc, cut completely through the acrylic down to the rubber. And using a buffalo dental knife, position it and break loose the acrylic tray. Pry it away from the rubber-based material. Trying not to amputate several of your fingers in the process. And we have a finished model. Our next procedure will be to section the dies with a saw and remove the dowel pins. We'll now section the dies with a saw. Place the saw as close to the die as possible without hitting the margin and cut completely through the acrylic. It may be necessary to cut completely through the acrylic down to the stone to enable us to remove the die. We'll do this on both sides of the die, and then we can remove it and trim it. After the die has been sectioned, we'll remove it, inspect it, and remove the excess wax from around the collar. For contrast, we used green wax rather than the red that we had used previously. And as you can see, after we remove this green wax, the die is almost to a trimmed state. The die can be trimmed with a Joe Dandy disc, with a silent stone, or with an acrylic burr, whatever works best in your hands. A word of caution: approach the margins very carefully. Remove enough of the acrylic so that the margins are exposed and we can easily wax to them and finish our gold. We'll now remove the impression pins. Grasp them either with a pair of orthodontic pliers or a hemostat. And before you attempt to remove them, with a slight twisting motion, break them loose from the silver and slowly back them out. On this finished model, we'd like to point out the dimple that we cut, which stabilizes the die, the edentulous ridge in acrylic, the central tooth in acrylic, and the bicuspid, which has a contact area in silver. To illustrate this better, we'll show this on a little larger die. We have the two slots on either side of the dowel pin, and your dowel pin will, of course, be longer than this represented here. The dimples in the stone, which retain the die in proper position. And even with as short and a round a dowel pin as this, when this is inserted, it gives quite a bit of stability to the die.